I'm Margaret Dalton. I spent 31 years as a flight attendant for a major international carrier. Transatlantic routes, Pacific routes, South America, every kind of crossing you can imagine. I have walked passengers through customs in more countries than most people will visit in a lifetime. And I need to talk to you today because something is happening right now that has older travelers more frightened than I have seen them in 20 years. And half of what they are afraid of is not even true. The other half is worse than they think. You may have seen the videos. They are everywhere. Thumbnails with big red letters saying TSA is checking your phone for 5 specific apps. Delete them before you fly. Seniors targeted. Your privacy is over. I have watched these videos. Some of them are narrated by someone who claims to be a flight attendant. And I need to tell you, as someone who actually was a flight attendant for 31 years, that these videos are mixing up the truth with exaggeration in a way that is going to either terrify you into never flying again or lull you into thinking the whole thing is fake and you have nothing to worry about. Both of those reactions are dangerous. So let me tell you what is real, what is not, and what happened to a passenger I will never forget. Because her story is the reason I am sitting here today, instead of keeping my mouth shut. First, the truth. TSA, the people at the security checkpoint before you board your domestic flight, does not search the contents of your phone. A TSA spokesperson has said it plainly. TSA does not request access to passengers' electronic devices. They may swab the outside of your phone to test for chemical residue, but they are not scrolling through your photos, your apps, or your messages. If you are flying from Dallas to Denver, the TSA agent checking your ID is not asking to see your WhatsApp. That part of the viral videos is wrong, and spreading that misinformation is irresponsible, especially when it scares older travelers who are already anxious about flying. But here is where it gets complicated, and here is where I need you to pay very close attention. If you are returning to the United States from an international flight, which I worked for 3 decades, you go through Customs and Border Protection, CBP. And CBP is a different story entirely. CBP has the legal authority to search your electronic devices at the border. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet. They can ask you to unlock it. They can scroll through your messages, your photos, your apps, your browsing history. They do not need a warrant. They do not need to suspect you of anything specific for a basic manual search. And if you refuse, if you are a US citizen, they cannot deny you entry, but they can seize your phone. They can hold it for days. They can copy your data. And if you are not a citizen, if you are on a visa, a green card, anything else, refusing can mean being denied entry into the country. Now, let me tell you about Nora Kessler. Nora was 73, retired music teacher from Evanston, Illinois. She had taught piano and voice at the same elementary school for 38 years. Small woman, maybe 5'2", always wore her reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck and carried a canvas tote bag with a treble clef printed on the side. Her husband, Howard, had passed 2 years earlier. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. And Nora had made herself a promise after the funeral. She was going to take the trips they had always talked about and never taken. Howard had always wanted to see Portugal. So Nora went to Portugal, alone, at 73. And I will tell you, that took courage, real courage, the kind that nobody gives older women credit for. I was working her flight home, Lisbon to Newark. She was in 27A, window seat, and I noticed her because she was doing a crossword puzzle with a mechanical pencil, which is something my own mother used to do. When I brought her water, she showed me a photo on her phone of herself standing in front of Geronimo's Monastery in Lisbon, smiling so wide it made my chest hurt because I could see in her face that she wished Howard was standing beside her. She said, "My daughter told me I was crazy to go alone. I told her I'd rather be crazy than sorry." When we landed at Newark, I watched her shuffle up the jetway toward customs. She was tired. 14 hours of travel, the layover, the long flight. She had her passport in one hand and her tote bag over her shoulder, and she was moving slowly but steadily, like someone who was used to doing hard things at her own pace. At the CBP checkpoint, an officer asked Nora to step aside for secondary screening. Now, this happens. Out of over 419 million travelers CBP processed last year, about 55,000 had their devices searched. That is less than 1/100%. It is rare, but rare does not mean impossible, and rare does not matter when it is happening to you. The officer asked Nora to unlock her phone. She did. She did not know she had the right to refuse. And even if she had known, she was 73 years old and exhausted and standing in front of a uniformed officer in a fluorescent-lit room, and the word no does not come easily in that situation. Not for her generation, not for anyone who was raised to respect authority and cooperate and trust that the system is fair. He scrolled. He looked at her apps. He looked at her photos. The monastery, the little cafe where she had sardines on toast, the selfie she took in the Alfama district, where she looked so happy it almost didn't look like grief anymore. He looked at her messages. Nora had been texting her daughter the entire trip. Little updates, photos of food, voice messages saying, "I wish your father could see this." He looked at those. He looked at her WhatsApp, where she had a group chat with 3 friends from her church choir. He read their messages. One of them, her friend Dolores, had sent a political meme, a joke about the current administration, the kind of thing that a 70-year-old woman forwards to her church friends without thinking twice about it, because that is what people do. They share things. They do not stop to consider that a customs officer might one day read it in a screening room at Newark Airport. The officer asked Nora about the meme. He asked who Dolores was. He asked if Nora shared those political views. Nora was confused. She said, "That's just my friend from choir. She sends those to everyone. I didn't even read it." He asked her more questions. Nora's hands started shaking, not dramatically, just that fine tremor that comes when your body decides it is afraid before your mind catches up. They held her for 2 hours. 2 hours in a secondary screening room at Newark, after 14 hours of travel, at 73 years old, because her friend sent a meme in a group chat. They let her go. They gave her phone back. They did not charge her with anything because there was nothing to charge. Nora walked out of that room, and her daughter was waiting in the arrivals hall, furious and terrified because her mother was 2 hours late and no one had told her why. When Nora saw her daughter, she did not cry. She just said, very quietly, "They read my messages, Jenny. They read everything." I found out because her daughter wrote to the airline, and the letter made its way to our crew, the way these things sometimes do. I need to be honest with you now, because I owe you that. In 31 years of international flights, I walked thousands of passengers to the end of the jetway, said goodbye, and watched them walk toward customs. And I never once said, "Be careful with your phone." I never once said, "They might ask to look through it." I never once warned a single elderly passenger about what could happen in that room. I knew. I knew because I had seen passengers pulled aside. I had heard stories from other crews. I knew, and I said nothing, because it was not my job, because saying something might have scared them, because I told myself it was rare and it probably would not happen to them. And then it happened to Nora. And I realized that every time I said nothing, I chose my own comfort over their preparation. That is my failure. Here is what I need you to understand. CBP is not targeting seniors. They are not hunting for 5 specific apps. That part of the viral videos is exaggerated. But CBP does have the authority to search your phone when you are entering the country. And it can happen to anyone, including a 73-year-old retired music teacher from Evanston who never broke a law in her life. And the apps on your phone, your messaging apps, your social media, your photos, your browsing history, are all visible during that search. They are not looking for the app itself. They are looking at the content inside it. So here is what I would tell every person over 60 who is planning an international trip. Before you fly home to the United States, think about what is on your phone. Not because you have done anything wrong. Nora certainly had not. But because you deserve to make an informed choice about what you are carrying through that checkpoint. back up your photos and messages to a secure cloud service before your trip. The officers can only search what is on the device itself, not what is stored in the cloud. Power your phone all the way off before you enter the customs line. This disables face and fingerprint unlock, so they cannot press your finger to the screen. An officer can request your passcode, but the legal protections around that are stronger than for biometrics. If you want to go further, you can remove sensitive apps, your banking, your medical records, your private messages before you travel and reinstall them when you get home. Your data stays safe in the cloud. And please, do not delete everything right before you land. A wiped phone can raise more suspicion than a full one. Do this days before your trip, not in the taxi. Every airline is different and every border crossing is different. So check with your airline and check the CBP website before you travel. But I am telling you this as someone who stood in the aisle of international flights for 31 years. Do not assume your phone is private at the border. It is not. The law says it is not. And being 73 and kind and carrying a tote bag with a treble clef on it does not change that. You younger folks listening, if your mother is about to fly home from her first international trip since your father died, do not just track her flight on an app and wait in arrivals. Sit down with her before she goes. Look at her phone. Help her understand what could happen. Be the person I was not for Nora. Be the daughter who prepares her instead of the one who finds out after. This channel is for people like us. People who have lived long enough to deserve the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. If this helped you, share it with someone who has an international trip coming up. Subscribe if you want more. I have 31 years of stories, and I am not done telling them. Nora never took another trip alone. Portugal was the first one and the last one. The promise she made to Howard to take the trips they never took, she broke it. Not because of the country, not because of the flight, because of 2 hours in a room where a stranger read her messages to her dead husband's memory and asked her about a meme her friend sent. Check your phone before you fly. Know what is on it and know what they can do with it. It takes an evening. An evening could have changed everything for her.